So when I went to get diagnosed with ADHD, I just expected ADHD diagnosis, but that didn't happen. I also got diagnosed with other things, and one of those things is autism, and it makes life a lot different when you're diagnosed with both. And since that time, I've learned some things that have helped me along the way, and I'm hoping these things will help you too, so I just wanted to share. Now, one of the things is in social situations where I'm trying to socialize, I don't understand all the expressions that people try to give or the vibes they try to give off or the meaning sometimes of when they're actually speaking to me and trying to tell me a story that's maybe more serious or tell me a story that's maybe more funny. I just don't understand that context, because when I'm trying to look at somebody and trying to figure it out, I just am socially awkward, and my reaction might not be the reaction that they're expecting because it might be inappropriate for that situation. And the other thing is, I just take things very literal a lot of times. So if someone tells me something and they're joking and it's supposed to be funny, but it's something I can interpret that's literal, then I'll interpret it as literal and I won't get in on the joke or that they were just trying to, poke fun at me or whatever, right? And that can be an issue because now the situation has become awkward as they realize I'm not really getting the joke or whatever, and then that whole conversation just becomes awkward, and that's just an issue. Now with ADHD, it's a lot different because when I'm talking to someone, there are a couple of things that happen. One, I could just be completely distracted and they're telling me something, I just am not paying attention to what they're saying because something has got my attention over here, over there. That's just, super interesting to me, and it's just more interesting to than whatever they're saying. And that may sound bad, but it's the truth because it's got my attention. And so when they ask me a question about whatever they're talking about, I am just like lost at that point because I didn't get the whole story or context or everything that they were trying to tell me. Or this happens too, where they're telling me something and I've got in my mind something I want to respond to, but I realize they are continuing to tell the story, but I had this response in my head at the time. I'm just holding it in there and I want to be impulsive and interrupt them. But if I interrupt them, then that's bad. I don't want to interrupt anybody, but I'm just sitting there thinking about, I want to deliver whatever information or response right now. And then I just get super like frustrated because I know as soon as they finish, I'm going to just blurt out whatever I have in my mind. And that can be really not good for the second reason is that if that happens and I say too much where I overshare more than what they actually wanted, then that can be an issue too, because they just like, hey, how do I get down the street? And I give them 30 minutes of directions and landmarks. And when you go this way and don't go this way at a certain time because traffic, and I give them all that and they just want to know one direction, then that makes me feel bad because I've given them all this information because I had a lot of information to give them, but they didn't want all that information. And then I realized that I'm like, oh, I said way too much. And that can be a bad thing too, because then it gets awkward too in that situation, because now everybody in that situation realize, okay, I've overshared, and they realize I've given them too much information, and they realize I didn't really understand the question and how much information that they actually needed. And I know it's not intentional, but it just makes the situation just uncomfortable for everybody because of how everything interacted. So what I do now is I just stop right before I give information out, right before I respond. I just take a second and just become aware of my surroundings, aware of what I'm thinking about saying. And then my hope is I'm only giving out what they ask for, what they need, and not all this other information that just doesn't matter or that they don't need. And here's a question that I want to ask you. Are you enjoying the content? Do you like this kind of content? If so, click the subscribe button for me so you don't miss any videos. And I do not like loud noises, and it's for a couple different reasons. One, if it's just too loud, I just want to be in another place, in another room where it's much quieter. I don't want to be in a concert that's just super loud, or in a, a sporting event that's super loud with all the crowds, all the cheer and everything, it's not a comfortable thing for me. I will go into those places someone wants to go, but I'm just not going to be super comfortable in that environment because of how loud it is. And that just bothers me. Or the other thing is, if you're in a place that's really loud, it's just really distracting. And when I'm trying to concentrate and focus on something, or focus on paying attention to something, and it's super loud, I can't focus on that at all because of how loud it is, because all that loudness really bothers me. And that's a huge issue. And both those things occur with ADHD or autism. One side is more of ADHD, about the focus, and one side is more of the autism side, about the loudness. Now with ADHD, yeah, it can also be a loudness thing with ADHD as well. But both of these things combined just make it really uncomfortable to be in loud environments. Now, what I actually do to help with that, I get noise canceling headphones so that all the loudness is drowned out. And you can get whatever kind of noise canceling headphones that you want, but you definitely need to get a pair, because it just makes it so much easier to just drown out all the extraneous noise. It makes it much more comfortable for me. I'll put a good pair of noise canceling headphones in the description of this video, so if you want to buy those, you can just click that link there. Now, another way that you can do this, if you're like, noise canceling headphones are just too big and bulky, I can't have them where I'm at, so I need another solution. So the other solution I've come up with are these loop earbuds, and what they do is they drown out a lot of the sound, and you can still hear everything around you, but it just makes it a lot more quieter. And that's a good thing, because I really like less noise in whatever environment that I'm in, and that really helps me. And I know this next thing is more on my autistic side. It is that I just love patterns. I look for patterns in everything, and the reason I do is because it makes it so much easier. If I have a pattern of that this goes this way, this step is this, and I can repeat those things, then I know, looking at that, I can always repeat it the exact same way, and I'll always get the exact result. And it makes it much easier to understand something or learn something if I know there's a pattern to it, or I can find it. And when I tell you I'm always looking for one, I am always looking for some kind of pattern, some kind of step-by-step process that I can learn, and then just repeat that process over and over and over again to get the exact same result. And then that becomes my process for that thing, even if that process is not the exact same as somebody else's process. It's just my process for doing that thing, and I'm not probably going to change it to something else as long as I get the result that I want. And having routines are the same way. When I find a good routine for something, I'm not going to change that routine. I'm going to repeat the same routine over and over and over again, because it makes it super easy for me to remember on one side, but it also is just something that I know that I can complete this thing. And what's the reason for changing it if it works the same way each time and gets the same result? And because of this, I just don't like change a lot, because once I find my comfortable routine, my comfortable process, I really know the pattern of whatever I'm trying to do, and then someone tries to come in and tells me, change this up, I'm not a fan of change. I like to do the same thing the same way a lot of the times. And just occasionally, once I've kind of got my head wrapped around, okay, there's a change coming that I need to do, let me just get ready for that change before it gets here, and then I'm okay with it. But I gotta know in advance, I gotta get myself kind of prepared for that change in advance. That way it doesn't like make me super uncomfortable when that change comes and I'm not prepared for it, and then I just don't like it at all, because I'm like, why am I changing this process that's tried and true? And this goes for like what I eat every day. I can eat the same thing every day and be just happy eating the same thing every day and never really changing it until I get just super bored of that one thing. Then maybe I'll have another thing that I want to actually go to that is really a good thing for me because I've already kind of got it in my head. I've already made it a huge amount of times. And so then I switched over to that one because it's comfortable for me as well. And then if I get tired of that one, I might switch back to the previous one, or I might have a third option that I always do. And then I go to the third option. But I'm just like, I can just have the same meal every day if I need to and just not get tired of it at all. I remember when I was like growing up, and I just loved pizza when I was growing up. And my mom used to say, "You're gonna turn to a pizza," which is kind of funny because every time that she would ask me what I wanted, I'd always say like pizza. So, and the same type of pizza every time. So even in my childhood, I was kind of the same way of making sure that the same thing was something that I ate a lot if I could. And this kind of brings me to something else. When I'm doing an activity, I look like I'm super focused on it. It could just be because that's my routine for that activity. So I may be super focused on it because I know I have to go through my steps to get there. Or I just become so interested in something that my ADHD side kind of takes over in that aspect. And so then I'm just really interested in that thing. It's not because I have a pattern or anything that I found. It's just because whatever it is super, super interesting to me at the time. And I want to find out more about it, or go into a deeper dive into it, or I'm just really down a rabbit hole at the time because I've looked something up and yeah, that was interesting, but I want to find out more about that thing. And then I end up not in the place I want to be for the first thing that I was looking for. I end up someplace completely different just because there were so many interesting things along the way. And that can be bad when you have ADHD, because then you don't even find the thing that you were initially interested in. You're just in some completely different place and doing some completely different thing, looking up some completely different thing. And that's frustrating sometimes. But that's not all. I learned about hyperfocus super early because I could find something I could hyperfocus on and it was actually something productive. Then that is just a good thing, because then I can use hyperfocus to its advantage. But on the other hand, I would hyperfocus on things that are not really productive, like video games, like just a favorite cartoon that I just want to watch. I just watch it over and over again, or some activity I just felt, okay, this feels pretty good to do this certain activity. So I'm just like all into focusing in on that thing. So I like hyperfocus sometimes because I know I'm doing something productive, but other times it's just not good at all because I need to actually be doing something else at the time, but I'm just into whatever I am just hyper focused on. And here's the other thing: when I'm interested in something, I just don't pay attention to anything really around me a lot of times. Like, you really have to come over and actually get in front of my face and talk to me and making sure I'm paying attention to you and to what you're saying. Otherwise, you could be saying something to me and I will just be oblivious to what you're saying and not even hear what you're saying. Oh, and the other thing about this is too, if I hear what you're saying and I'm paying attention to something else, as soon as I get to the point to where I think I know what you said, then I'll go ahead and respond, not waiting for the whole thing that you were actually trying to say, just off the little bit of information that I think that I know, without waiting for step 2, step 3, step 4, or step 5, or just part 2, part 3, part 4. I just get to the first like couple of sentences or a couple of words. I'm like, oh, okay, I know what to do in that situation. And that can be bad because then I don't have the whole story. And if they want me to respond to something and I'm telling them already some information and they already know the information, and then I'm not actually telling them anything new about the information that they actually want to actually get from me, then that can just make it pretty awkward. Or if they're trying to tell me how to do something and I'm like, okay, got it, and I just go and try to do whatever they're trying to do without hearing the whole thing, because I think I know what they told me and I don't have to worry about all the rest of the stuff they said. Okay, thanks for whatever you want me to do. I'm gonna go do that, and I'm off doing whatever. And then I come back and find out, oh, there's a lot more to what they wanted me to do or what they needed me for, the information they wanted me to give them. And then that creates an awkward and uncomfortable situation, because now I know I didn't get all the information that they wanted me to get. And so now I'm at a place where I have to go back and say, oh, okay, well, now I got to do this over, or I need to figure out what extra information I need to give them. And this sometimes happens as well, as to where somebody's just giving me too much information. I'm trying to hold it into my brain, all the first part of the information they gave me, and then they're still giving me information. At some point, I just say, hey, I can't take any more information. You're gonna have to slow down, or repeat this or repeat that. And the thing that I do that helps me with that is to have a pen and piece of paper that I can write things down on, because then I can actually take the first part of the information and put it on a piece of paper or a notebook or whatever, and then I'm able to take in more information. But otherwise, if I don't have the piece of paper and a pen, then I'm probably going to forget the first thing that you told me, and I may remember the last thing that you told me, or I may remember the middle part of what you're trying to tell me and not have the first and the last part of it. It just depends on what information my brain actually lets me hold in, as opposed to you have to kind of slow down and make sure that I have everything correct. Otherwise, no telling what information that I actually have that you're trying to tell me. And then I'm probably going to tell you to repeat it, or I'll just think I have everything, and then I'll have to call you later or text you later, or email you later and say, hey, I don't have, this information or that information. And that may make that person feel like, well, they weren't paying attention. I just didn't get it all at one time, so now you have to give it to me again. And the thing that's frustrating, it looks like I'm not paying attention. I'm not trying to focus on what they're saying, and my mind's just distracted. And it may be distracted because of all these different other factors, not because I'm not trying to actually pay attention to what you're saying, or not because I don't want to actually have the information you're trying to give me or do the thing you want me to do, and just not having all the steps to it. All these things can be going on, and that means my attention is not fully on that person and what they're saying. My attention is in any one of these different places, and that can be an issue, because if you don't understand how ADHD works, how autism works, then you may not understand that I'm distracted by a lot of other things with a lot of other possibilities. And that can be a awkward, not so good situation, because that person may get frustrated with me because of the fact that they feel I wasn't paying attention at all, or even trying to pay attention. And here's something else that I know is more on the autistic side. It's just textures. It's just, if the clothes just have a different texture to them that I don't like, I can't wear the clothes that have that texture to them. I have to have different clothes that have a texture that I actually like. And this is really bad with food. If I bite into a food that's like mushy and that's the texture that it has, I don't like that food at all. This is like for beans that have that mushy inside, I can't do them at all. It's just one of those things about the texture of biting into one, and doesn't make me feel good about eating that food. And if a food has a texture I do not like, I'm probably not ever going to eat it, because of the fact it makes me uncomfortable just trying to eat that thing, because of the fact that the texture is just all wrong to me. And I don't know if anybody it deals with that, but I know that I deal with it. And even something I like touch and I don't like the texture of how it feels when I touch it, I'm probably not touching that thing again at all. It's a big thing for me, because I do have to adjust certain things because of the fact that, okay, I'm not going to actually use this thing or eat this thing or even go near this thing because of the texture. So how do I adjust to only have things that I like? And I generally do that. I figure out what things that I like, that I don't have to worry about the texture and everything. Then I have those specific things, and I actually may wear those specific things every day and have just a set number of clothes in my closet, because I know that these clothes fit and they feel good, and I don't really have to go out and buy any other clothes because of the fact that these are a good outfit. And the other thing is, I like minimalism because then it makes my decision of what I'm going to wear really easy. And I can get clothes I can actually make multiple outfits just by having certain pieces of clothing and just interchanging them for different outfits. And that makes it really easy as well too, because then I know, hey, everything I've got a good texture. I like the clothes. I enjoy wearing the clothes, and I don't really have to have a huge variety of clothes because I don't have that many situations to where I need a lot of different clothes anyway. And this really boils down to that ADHD and autism are commonly diagnosed together. So common that AUADHD is now a term that a lot of people use. I didn't know that at the time, but it kind of makes sense because they do overlap really well. They are comorbid disorders, which I don't like the word comorbid because morbid is just not a nice word to say a lot of times. So what I say instead is that ADHD comes with friends, and this is one of the friends that ADHD comes with. And I say that because it's just a nicer way to say ADHD comes with other diagnoses than just being diagnosed with ADHD, which can happen. You just get diagnosed with ADHD and nothing else. But commonly, anyway, it has other things that it comes with. And so you may want to look at, when you go get diagnosed with ADHD, if there's anything else that may come along with it, because then it's a better thing to actually make sure that you go ahead and take care of both, or handle both, or try to figure out how you're going to handle both throughout your life. And here's the thing, I have a video that talks about when I actually went to get diagnosed and more about ADHD and having its friends, how it comes along with friends. And I'm gonna put that video. Go ahead and click that video and watch that video, because if you haven't got your diagnosis yet, then this will help you